So, good morning. I'm Dr. Scott from Sixth Sense Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club, and I'm a registered acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist. And we have a wonderful guest this morning on the Get Busy Livin Podcast, and that is Sandra Gartner. And thank you so much, Sandra, for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Lovely to be here.
So, I'll start off with the usual question. So, tell us, Sandra, what gets you out of bed every morning?
Well, I have got some pretty ingrained daily habits. So I have a little routine and I've been doing it for a very long time. So it's just become second nature for me. And if I just continue to stick with that routine, it gives me some structure and a way to get out of bed and move into the day. So it's normally around, just wake up, do some mindfulness practice, whatever that might look like. Then get up, have a drink, do some exercise, and then I've got sort of a plan for the rest of the day. But I have a very strong routine that gets me going, and I think that gives me a lot of consistency in my day. And of course, the other thing that always motivates me is having a purposeful work, purposeful life. And so there's things that I'm drawn to, of course, to get moving so that I can feel like I've had a great day.
So, yeah, I totally agree. You got to look after yourself first. How can you look after others if you don't look after yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree. Much appreciated on the info. And so I see that you help grow businesses to achieve greater prosperity and impact.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a business leadership coach and mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, how did you get into that? How did you get into business leadership and coaching?
Yeah, I think for like a lot of people that are have their own business, it's a sort of a long and meandering road. You try a few things and then you try a few other things. But I think that at the very core, I grew up in a small business family. So it was just part of my early upbringing. It was all around the dinner table about, business. And so I always had a fascination with business. And I also lived firsthand the highs and lows of that with my family. So, the highs were when things were going really well. My mother and father both worked in this small business. And of course, when the kids got old enough, we also worked in that small business from a very young age. And when things were going well, it was great. But when things weren't going well, it was really tough. So I sort of saw the highs and lows of what that looks like. And so growing up in that environment, I was always interested in how to, I guess, create your own business, your own income, be self-reliant, and then also be mindful of what can get in the way of that. And, certainly that informed me in terms of when I started working, I realised that I really wasn't great at being an employee. I was okay at it, but I'd rather run the show than have someone tell me what to do. So I was always driven to go into business, which I ended up doing quite a few times. And I had that journey myself. So, some losses, some fails, some businesses that did okay. And then, the last one that did very well. So I learned through doing. And I also recognise that it's not just always about the structures and the external factors that inform your progress or your success, but it's really about what's going on internally, what your, I guess you could say, your mindset, how you're handling the disappointments, the challenges as they show up, and what do you do with that? And I guess it led me to becoming, after I sold that last business, we were away for a couple of years, came back, and I got some work as a business coach in a government-funded program that was helping start up businesses. So I saw that early phase of people wanting to get something off the ground, and I helped people navigate that pathway. And I could see that some were going to really fly because they were willing to learn and grow and be open to the challenges, and others were going to really struggle with it. So it got me thinking about, well, who do you need to be able to lead yourself, to be able to lead a business and lead a team? So I sort of brought those two elements into my practice. I offer coaching services to grow businesses, but really it's about growing the owner of the business so that they are capable of growing their team and their business along with themselves.
So we'll just back it up a little bit. And just back to your parents. So what sort of businesses did they have?
It was a fruit and veg. It was like a greengrocer shop, and they had a couple of them. So I grew up behind that shop. So it was actually, in my world, 24/7. This fruit and veg shop in Adelaide.
So obviously you would have to learn to eat properly because you're surrounded by fruit and veg.
Yeah, and as soon as I could count, I was out the front, stacking shelves and doing whatever I could do, going to the markets with my father, haggling for the carrots. I remember all that. He was very good at haggling on price because, as he told me, it's all about the buy price, Sandra. It's all about the buy price. So he was good at negotiating a good price on the produce. And then, of course, it was 7-day-a-week business. He was open every day of the week, and my mother was there with him. So it was full on.
So yes, so I know a few chefs, and they say the same thing. They say that if you want good quality produce, then you need to be able to haggle, and the best chefs are very good at that. That's what they're really good at. They're really good at getting a great price for a good quality fruit and vegetable because they got to serve it. So you want it to have taste, and you want to get it as low a price as possible. So that's like, I wished I had that, Sandra. I'm a little bit envious because I wasn't taught any of that when I was young. We went to the fruit market and stuff, but taught how about but we were consumers, so
And I think that's
we weren't buying it wholesale.
No, and that's normal, isn't it? Really, you learn as you need to learn, and you follow your passion and your interest, and things evolve and emerge, and you just navigate your way through.
Well, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that my parents were taught to pay the retail price, whereas your parents were taught to pay the wholesale price. So of course, then that gets taught down the line to the next to your children. So I wished I had that. I wished I was taught how to negotiate wholesale price.
Yeah.
It would have come in handy in Thailand, that's for sure. I was going to say,
it's not too late. It's not too late, Scott.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm learning now. I mean, it's still learning now, But yeah, that's an important. What do you call it? It's like my supply is the same, no different. Trying to negotiate. How can I? Would you give me an extra of this if I buy this? If I buy this in bulk from you? Then will you give me this?
Yeah,
as something.
Yeah. Negotiation. It's a skill that you can learn, and it's just practice. Parties, but negotiation.
But that's what I mean. Is it's hard to break that retail mentality. Oh, that's the price that's set for it. I can't negotiate it.
And we don't tend to do that much here, do we? Whereas overseas, I mean, you go to Asia, and negotiation is part of the whole transaction. You've got to negotiate the price.
That's what I'm saying. In Thailand, I wish I knew that in Thailand. I would have bought a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a hint, guys. If you go to Thailand or any Southeast Asian country for that matter, and China as well, and Hong Kong, go over there with an empty suitcase or just a side bag, because you buy the bag while you're over there, and you buy your clothes while you're over there. Because it's probably about a third of the price what you buy it with here. Easy. Sometimes a quarter of the price, depending on where you're negotiating. So okay, and so you are. So how'd you go out of school? Did you go into a job, or did you?
I went to uni. And I did occupational therapy. So I became an occupational therapist. That was my first career, and I worked in that field for a number of years in mental health services in WA. Actually, I studied in Adelaide, and then I moved to Perth because I wanted to work. Yeah, I wanted to work.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Got out of the island and went to the furthest part of
That's right. Yeah, it was part of my escape plan to get out of Adelaide.
I'm only kidding. I love what WA. I love
Yeah, no, it was a fun time. It was a great time, and I worked over there for quite a number of years in that profession. But that, as I said, I sort of realised that the call to go into business was pretty strong. I ended up going to Sydney, um, and I was sort of at a loose end after leaving Perth and thinking, well, what do I want to do? And a girlfriend and I were having a coffee, and this is in the I think it was the early 90s, and we were saying, well, let's open a cafe. That'd be fun. How about we open a cafe? What do you do when you're 24, 25 and, at a loose end and think, well, why not? Let's do that. So we did. We spent 6 months, trying to work out how to do it. I got a job in a local cafe so I could at least get an idea how to make a coffee, and we ended up opening a cafe. So that was my first real foray into a real, bricks and mortar business, and that was an amazing learning experience as a young female in Sydney, trying to get into that market. So yeah.
And but I mean, same again. You can go back to those understandings of when you were younger. You can negotiate, so that helps a lot. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. That was great, but that business actually failed, and it didn't fail because it was a bad business. It was actually profitable. It was 2 years. We'd been running it for 2 years. It was a lot of hard work, but we were having a great time. And but the reason it failed, there ended up being three of us in the partnership, and the partnership got into trouble, and we were too young to negotiate our way through it. We didn't know how to. We just couldn't deal with the difficulty or the drama of it. And the only solution we could come up with was just to dissolve it. And we, in fact, all walked away. And our chef at the time, our cook, he wasn't a chef, he was a cook at the time, we just handed it to him. He said, look, you just take the lease. We'll just take what we've got in it and you just run it. And he just carried on. But I look back on that, and wasn't that the business was failing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was in a great spot. We had lots of clientele, and we were just starting to hit our stride. It was the partnership failed, and we weren't mature enough or wise enough to handle it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I look praise to you, because when I was 24, I wasn't thinking about opening up a cafe. I was more concerned about which bar was going to be open on Friday, Saturday night, and which club I was going to go to. So yeah, that's a big deal for me. It's a big deal because at that time, there's not many 24-year-olds that would do what you did.
Mm-hmm.
But that comes back to you had
Mm-hmm.
that background of
Mm-hmm.
going into business and having a crack. And I'm amazed that you lasted 2 years, because the statistics say it's 12 months is the deadline. That's when most businesses go bust.
And we did it on a smell of an oily rag. I mean, we had very little money, so it was just really done with a lot of love and passion, and it was just very eclectic, and it was in a crazy spot, and anyway, it somehow it all worked at that time, and sometimes we were so crazy busy it was hard to keep up. Other times it was just quiet and what are we doing? But overall, it was an amazing learning experience doing something like that. But mostly it really made me recognise that partnerships, they've got enormous value, and I've been in partnerships after that. There's enormous values in partnerships, but you've got to have the capacity to deal with those difficulties when they arise and the conflict that can arise. So that's going to happen, of course. Put people together and there's going to be conflict. So what do you do with that, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. So, okay. So you moved on from the business, and what happened then? What did you get into then?
So that finished. I think I probably got back into some employment to get some stability for a couple of years. And again, because I'm good at organising and running things, I got a job with the local council, Waverley Council in Sydney, and I was running their community centres. So managing, they had a whole 4 community centres, and I was running one of those. So it was really a service-based centre that had funding, usually government funding, and I was managing that. So that was a pretty interesting role. because it was like a business to me, and it allowed me to grow something that had a great, it was of great value to the local community. Um, so I did that for quite a few years, and then ended up coming to Brisbane. So met my now husband, and he was on his way to Brisbane, so I followed along 6 months later.
There you go. And then, so when you come to Brisbane, what happened then? That you didn't follow on to that?
Yeah, no, I got into another business actually. So that what happened then again, it's sort of similar when I think about it. I had this space. I'd arrived here, and there was this blank canvas, what I want to do. And I think through a workshop or through some connection, I met up with a guy that was running these events. So it was an events business, really. And it was promoting personal development, natural therapies, those sort of modalities, which was still fairly on the fringe. And this is again in the 90s, maybe 95, around that time. So, and he was promoting a program. It was called the Next Step Expo. That's right. It was the Next Step Expo. And it was a 2-day program. He would put together lots of practitioners, and people would come along and they'd have an experience of a whole lot of modalities. And there was, absolutely, there was acupuncturists and chiropractors and Reiki healers and aromatherapists, a whole lot of people. And we got that. He was getting that off the ground. I thought, this is a great idea, because I'm, one of my strong values is health and well-being. I'm very much into natural medicine, so there was a wonderful alignment of our values. I thought I could do this. I've got time, and we launched it, and it was pretty successful. I think we did it a couple of times. We had like centres promoting us. This is before the internet, so that we had naturopathic centres and a few natural therapy centres selling tickets on our behalf. So they were like selling for us, and we got a decent roll up. So that was sort of interesting. So, but the mistake here was we sort of proved the concept, and then we decided that we could go bigger and better and bolder. So we rolled it out into Sydney and Melbourne, and that's when it became more difficult, because now you're trying to do something more remotely where you haven't got the connections. And my business partner at the time, he moved down to Sydney to try and coordinate the Sydney event, and that was pretty good. But we tried to do the same thing in Melbourne remotely, and that was a fail. So, there's a lot of upfront costs for something like this, and when you have a fail, it can really suck a lot of the cash out of the business. So that lasted a couple of years, that business, and in the end we decided we'd part company. We hadn't lost any money, but we hadn't really made it to where we thought we were going to go. But that partnership was very solid, and I think that was a great thing to happen on the back of what happened in my cafe partnership, because we could negotiate the difficulties, and we could lean into the disagreements and the challenges and come up with a better solution because of that. So we parted company, but out of that, then through one of the practitioners that was presenting, I then evolved into having a business as a wholesale distributor for a brand called In Essence Aromatherapy. And this is when, in the early days, when aromatherapy was just hitting its stride. It was still on the fringe, really. And a couple of sisters down in Melbourne had launched this brand, In Essence, a therapeutic grade essential oil range. So again, I loved it. I was very committed to the natural therapies. So I just ran with it and decided I can get this product into whole lot of retail outlets, and that's really what I did. I started to build a wholesale distribution network for their product, and it started off with just that one range, and getting it into at that stage, again, because it was fairly fringe, it was initially getting it into new age bookstores and health food stores. And then over time, we got it into pharmacies. And when that happened, it really opened up for my business, because we got much bigger distribution. And then I started to bring in other brands, so not just the In Essence range, but I brought in other brands because I already had a distribution network of retailers. I could just plug in other products that were aligned, and grew that business for 14 years. I had that business for a long time.
Wow. Yeah, 14 years. And so if you don't mind me asking, what'd you get out of that? What'd you get out of?
Okay, so a couple of reasons. The reason I got into it was I wanted to start a family. So I wanted to have a home-based business so I could have a baby. That was the reason I got into it. And fortunately, I had my son. He came a few years later, but he was there, and he was there through probably the last 9 years. And he grew up like as I did. It was interesting. He grew up as I did, immersed in a business. And a couple of years towards the end, I formed another partnership. So I joined up with another distributor down in New South Wales who I got to know, and we had plans to go into some manufacturing of our own brand and also share resources and also become more efficient. If we could pool our resources, we'd become more efficient. Therefore, ideally, things would scale better. And as we got closer and closer to the launch of this brand, I just thought, I don't think I want to spend another, because I know what it takes to get a brand off the ground. I mean, it's a lot of work, and you've got to give it at least a good few years before you've got any real momentum, let alone return on your time and investment. So as we got close to that point, I just thought, I don't want to be here for this. I think I've had my run. I want to be able to be, I guess, moving onto another direction. My son's now 9. There was a lot of factors that came into it. So I actually just sold my share to my partners and got out. And so it was a very easy transition out because they were already there. And I just said, look, I think I don't want to go forward. I'm not going to commit to the next 5 years. I better pull out now. So that's how it happened.
That's fair. That's a great. That's great. That's fantastic. So you know what the next question is going to be? What happened then? What did you do? What did you do?
Yes. So now again, I had wow, I've got all my time back, and my husband, who is also a coach, interestingly enough, and he works much more in corporate leadership, organizational development world. He got offered a contract in the Solomon Islands to work over there in the rebuilding phase. Yeah, so the rebuilding, it was after the big uprising, and the government had put a lot of money into rebuilding the country because of the security risk. And he got a role working within the public sector. It was the Public Sector Improvement Program, I think it was called. He went in there basically as a organisational development leadership consultant, if you like, to help with the rebuilding of the public sector. So he got that offer. I said, hey, look, why not? Let's go. We could all go over there, and what a wonderful opportunity for him, but also really for Jackson, our son, to be in a different culture for 2 years, and for me. I mean, I just love an adventure anytime. So let's give it a go. So that's where we went. We went and lived in the Solomon Islands for 2 years in Honiara, and it was an incredible time for many reasons. Really to be in another culture for that length of time, and it was a culture that was very very community orientated. So, we live in a very me culture. It's all about the individual, whereas there it's much more tribal. They're very connected into the we culture. It's all about us. So now we're living in a whole different mentality of how people operate in the world and trying to fit into that. I ended up getting some work because, again, after a few months, I thought I've got to make myself, once we got settled and Jackson was in school and things were going well, I thought, I've got to make some move towards some sort of work to feel like I've got meaning in my day and contributing. So I got some work with a local business, and it was wonderful. I just made some wonderful relationships and really felt very part of something that was it was a fantastic couple of years. Loved it.
So so just tell us, where's the Solomon Islands?
It's in the South Pacific. You've got PNG up the top of Australia.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's near PNG, isn't it?
Yeah, if you keep going east, sort of southeast,
okay.
Solomon Islands are the next group of islands. There's about 900 odd islands that make up the Solomon Islands. And of those 900 islands, there's, hundreds of dialects. So they're all individual, historically they were all individual islands with their own dialect. And then they formed this country called the Solomon Islands at some point. And it was protected by the British for many years. And so a lot of the institutions and the rule of law is all from the British model. And then they were given their independence, and they were sort of, the British said, here you go, we've set it up, you run with it. And then slowly it all decayed because of that tribal we culture that they come from. And, it is, and it all fell apart in 1999 when there was the big uprising and, riots in the street, and there was guns and a whole lot of things happened. That the government then formed a coalition of nations, New Zealand and Australia being the key ones, to actually, they got, amazingly, send in the helicopters. So it was wasn't an invasion because they were invited in by the government, but legally they had to go through a whole lot of things to allow that to happen. And the military came in to try and stabilise it because it was just falling apart, and they didn't want to have a failed state on the border, our neighbours failing for security reasons. So,
wow.
Yeah,
and you went into that? And you went into that?
Yeah. And it was a few years later, but there was still lots of unrest. We were still there when there was riots. We were still there when, they burnt down Chinatown. We were still there when there was earthquakes often, tremors. There was a lot of things going on that this country dealt with. And talk about resilience. I mean, they just keep batting up, keep going. I mean, there's no option really, but that's
that's right. Yeah, that's right. I've got a lot of friends from PNG, and they didn't go through that, but they say it is the wild, wild west in PNG as well.
Yeah,
so it'd be a very similar,
very similar
environment.
Yeah, very similar. And I've done a bit of work remotely in PNG too, but it's that same culture really. Although the thing with PNG is much bigger population, and they do have, there are guns everywhere, so it's there's a lot of that fear going on.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Okay, so what? So you just work for an employer in the Solomons?
Yeah, so in the Solomons, yes, I got some work. It was a local company that my part of the job was really, they had the contract to support when the expats arrived in the country. They had the contract to support their onboarding and the family and all that. So I used to write newsletters.
Okay.
I used to go and do some liaison stuff. I had a little team that would support that, and it was great. It was really lovely.
So you'd help people to settle, basically.
That's it, and be a contact point, because it's a big adjustment, and a lot of people were coming in. Ausaid with the personnel coming in, often coming in from Canberra, and it might have been their first posting overseas. So it's a big wake up call for Canberra.
It would be, especially if it's your first posting. I suppose young people coming into the wild, wild west, they'd be like, "What is this?"
I know. It's the whole.
Although I've heard Canberra is a bit like the wild, wild west. I was going to say, so you finished up in the Solomons and then come back. Obviously, did you come back to Brisbane or did you go somewhere else?
Yeah, came back to Brisbane. Yeah, yep, came home.
And then what happened then? Did you start another business?
Yeah, so from there again, I just thought, well, where do I want to go now? It's like I've got some possibilities, and I just happened to land a role with a funded program called the New Enterprise Incentive Scheme. I don't know if you know, but it's a federally funded program.
Yes,
that supports,
I have heard of it.
Yeah, the NEAT program. So it supports people that are looking to start up businesses, and they go through a program where they build a business plan, and they get 12 months of mentoring support. So I came in as a business mentor, and that really got me, I guess, very much involved in supporting that early phase of of a business, getting it off the ground and getting them through the first 12 months. And I did that. I started, I worked part-time, I worked full-time, I worked part-time, just depending. They were very flexible in terms of what I wanted. But I was in that role for a long time because, again, it was highly satisfying to support often young people too, not always, but a lot of times, young people trying to get their vision and their dreams into reality and what that would take for that to happen. And again, often on a shoestring, they never had much in terms of resources to fund something like this. So it really came down to a lot of innovation and hard work.
Yeah. Okay. And then, what happened then? Did you go into another business or?
So that was happening on the side, and then I was also working with some private clients. I started to get a few private clients
Oh yeah.
just for coaching work, and so that's just been how it's been happening. I guess eventually I gave that job up, and my husband and I 6 years ago we formed Essentia Coaching because he was a coach, I was a coach. We thought, well, let's just come together and see if we can create, work together. And so we did that about 6 years ago, and here we are, still married and in business. So a successful partnership, one would say.
Well done. Yeah, that is the heart. Yeah, that's the keystone of a good marriage. When you're working together and also living together.
Yeah,
that means you enjoy each other's company. So I
yeah.
was going to say, okay, and so tell us about how you've helped a client in the past
Mm,
with their business.
mm.
Give us a testimonial.
Okay. Which one shall I pick? There's a lot, but I think the one that probably stands out the most is I had someone come to me about maybe 4 years ago, and she had a PR agency, so she worked providing PR services, had done for many years, but very much was running the show with a whole lot of subcontractors, and she had lost a key person. I think she had a couple of staff, but she had lost a key person, someone on staff that really left, and they had a lot of knowledge about the back end of her business and a lot of stuff that she didn't have any knowledge about. So she contacted me in a bit of a panic about, well, what do I do? I don't know how to get through this crisis. And as we sort of spoke, it became more apparent that she really didn't have much of an exit plan either. She was working long, hard hours, and not only were things in a bit of a critical moment, but she also recognised that she wanted to have some way out of this business over the next 7 years because she'd been doing it a long time. And what she wanted was to be able to bring in some of her long-term subcontractors that have been with her providing the services, bring them in as partners. And so we worked together over a year to have that happen, restructure her business and bring her team in. So she brought in 3 partners, and we put in some processes to support that. But we also spent a lot of time forming that team in a way that it was going to be, drama-free, if you like, as best as it could be. So a functional operating team that would support her to build that business, but also ultimately have her step away from that business. So that was a wonderful client, and I'm still working with them. So it's been a long-term client, not so heavily, but I'm still contracted to them to provide some stuff. So it is very satisfying that she's come a long way from where she was. The business has really grown a lot, and she can see her pathway out in the next 4 years. Now it is that she's going to withdraw, and the business is very solid, whereas previously it was very shaky. So that was about really working with the team. And the other part I just want to also say, Scott, is I part of what I offer as a foundational piece for owners and or their team, if they're willing to look at it, is building their mental fitness. I don't know if you know about the Positive Intelligence program, but I do have that as an offer that people can go and do this 6-week app-based program where I facilitate them. And that really opens up a lot of awareness around our own internal negative habits of mind that will get in the way. So, for example, in partnerships, a lot of the stuff that goes on for people is, blaming the other for things not going right, thinking that they're the victim. Why doesn't anyone listen to me? I mean, all that stuff is just your own internal sabotaging behaviour, keeping you below the line, keeping you not taking responsibility. So this mental fitness program really opens up the awareness around that, but more importantly than just awareness, it builds the mental muscle, if you like, or the new habits of mind that allow you to know that when you get sabotaged or hijacked by these negative thoughts, you do a little practice that gets you, present, puts a bit of a break on that hijacking, and then opens up some positive responses, some positive habits of mind. And by doing that habitually, this is back to habit formation where we started the conversation. By doing that habitually, you're going to go to those places which are more expansive and opening than staying in that negative habit of mind which keeps you restricted. So that's a big foundational piece that I also put this group through. And that gave them a common language around, what was going on for them internally, and they could discuss that openly. So it was a wonderful process for them to go through.
Yes, we are our own worst enemy, Sandra. So I was going to say, okay, and so tell us, give us a second one. Have you got another great testimonial or another client that you helped?
Well, I guess I work with so many that it just depends what people are really. People come in with an idea of what they want. And usually in business, mostly people want more profit. That's usually what they come for. They're flatlined or they're plateaued or things aren't going to plan. Or they want more impact. That's the other thing people can come in with. They feel like they've reached a limit to their impact, and they want to have more of an impact. And out of that will come more profit. So it just depends what people present with, but often there's an underlying issue that once explored, you can really start to shift people quite a long way. So I guess another business might be okay. So I work with a solo operator. So she's a solo entrepreneur. She's a wedding photographer. She came to me because she, again, was doing all the work herself and had reached her capacity. Basically, what I say, she'd hit a brick wall. She'd got as far as she could get and just couldn't get any further. And part of that was her system, her structure, her business model. Part of that was that. She just didn't have the capacity to do any more work. But part of it was her. So part of it was her thinking about what was possible and how she could operate and how she could, vision a future that was more than just a hard grind. And so, again, we worked together for probably 6 months, maybe a bit longer, to really open up her vision around where she could see herself going, and then built what needed to be built for that to allow that to evolve. And that required bringing in, a second shooter, bringing in videography services, just expanding her product range, but more importantly, bringing a team around her. Even though they were subcontractors, bringing a team around her so she could, one, outsource some of the work, but also feel like she wasn't doing it all alone. And her business has doubled. I mean, she's flying, and she's actually now her new goal. So she was all about doing weddings mostly in Queensland. Occasionally she'd fly interstate, but then she decided that she'd like to do weddings in Europe. Why not? Hey, let's go to Europe. And she's over there at the moment. And her goal for next year was to have, I think, 25 weddings booked in Europe. And when I spoke to her before she left, she'd had 17 bookings for next year in Europe. So she's going to go over there and actually live for 3 months. Now, she would never even thought about that before she came in to see me. Her view of what was possible was, this big, and all of a sudden now she's a global business. And she's over there at the moment, and she'll come back the wedding season here because we're coming into that really busy time. But she's planning to go back next year and live in Italy, I think it is, and then flit around for 3 months and do these European weddings.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, I'll go into what would be your ideal client or ideal avatar?
Yeah. I think my ideal client is someone who I work with a lot of women, so let's say that up front. I tend to work with a lot of women, not to dismiss men, but I do attract a lot of women. So if it was going to be an ideal client, it would be a female business owner that has been in business, a service-based business, for a number of years. Could be 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, and they've just recognised that whatever they're doing is not getting them to where they want to go into the future. They've got to a certain point and they've done really well to get there, and really acknowledge that they've got a business that's got legs, but they've just hit their edge. They can't go any further. So they recognise that and they come to me because they want to get support to bust through the limitations they've set for themselves, but also bust through the limitations that their business has set up, the way it's been set up from the start. So that's really, I guess, they're feeling frustrated, often overwhelmed, overworked. Sometimes they're disillusioned. They've fallen out of love with their business, what they started and were very passionate about. Now just seems like a chain, tied to their ankle. They feel like they just can't get away from it, and they're just needing to refine themselves and refine why they're there and redefine what's possible, and go after that. So it's falling back in love with your business, I guess, and getting from it what you're looking for. And for me, it's always about, it's who do you need to become to have the business you want to have. So who do you need to become to have the business you want to have? That's the important step.
Yeah, well, like you said, everyone starts off, they want to be a multi-millionaire, and then then they figure out, oh, there's more to life than just being a multi-millionaire. That's true. So I'll go on to the last question. You've done really well. We're up to like 43 minutes now, so I'll go into the last question. So give us some ideas, because you're an OT, so this will be interesting to hear your thoughts. So give us any ideas or any information on lifelong longevity.
Yeah, I love this topic. I'm a big podcast listener, so I love your podcast, and I listen to quite a few around longevity and health, because that's important to me. So for me, I think you've got to stay engaged. First of all, you've got to be engaged in life, and that's emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. If you're not engaged, if you're disengaged, then that life force is going to start to diminish. So you've got to, first and foremost, be engaged in life, and then really look after those components that keep you hopefully in an optimal place. So it's got to be diet, exercise, community, connection, purpose. Um, you know, have fun, take things lightly. It's not all serious all the time. Enjoy life, be grateful. I think it's that. It's a head, heart, gut. Be connected, be engaged. Look after your brain. So keep learning. That's very important to me. I'm really very big on learning myself in those environments where I can keep learning and challenging myself. The heart is about the connection. Opening to love and connection. Keep that happening however you can. And then the gut. Well, eat well, exercise, look after yourself. Don't ignore any signals that come at you. Go and see your acupuncturist. Go and see your practitioner. Get it checked out, because prevention is always better than cure.
And have Con the Fruiterer as your father. That helps a lot too.
That's it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's it. Eat well. Very important.
Well, it's true, isn't it? They teach you. It was a King Solomon said, "Give me the boy for the first 7 years of his life, and I'll make him the man." Yeah. So that's very true. If you're brought up in an area, environment where there's negotiating about food and making food a
Mm.
priority, it
Mm.
goes a long
Mm.
way, especially when you get older.
Mm.
All right, that's much appreciated, Sandra. So if you could put your details in the links, we're going to get. I'll get my virtual assistant to my associate to give you the links to the 3 platforms that we've lived on, and give your details. So if people have questions or they want to get in touch with you about their business or
Yeah, great.
about any mindset issues that they have,
Yeah.
please contact Sandra. And thank you so much for your time today, Sandra.
And I'm always happy to chat to people. Just complimentary, have a chat. Because sometimes that that just adds so much value. People can take away something that they go, oh, okay, great. So anytime.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sandra. You have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.